Thanks, Brooke. The judge forced Michael Cohen to admit in court that he has a third client, and the third client is Sean Hannity. Go home, 2018. You're drunk. The lead starts right now. Breaking news, Stormy Daniels coming face-to-face with President Trump's so-called fixer, as the fixer's lawyers, Michael Cohen's lawyers, drop a name that rocks the courtroom, a client's name, Fox News host Sean Hannity. So what did Hannity do that needed fixing? Unfit for duty? James Comey calls the sitting president of the United States a liar who lacks morals, who might be vulnerable to Russia. Wait until you hear how President Trump responded today. Plus, the rift growing deeper between the world's biggest nuclear powers after President Trump orders airstrikes on Syria. Is there a plan for after when the dust settles? Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. We begin with the politics lead today and words that surely have never before been said by any news anchor in any circumstance. The president's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, who is under criminal investigation, is appearing in court right now alongside adult film actress Stormy Daniels. And there's already a bombshell revelation. We now know that among Michael Cohen's clients is Fox News host Sean Hannity. We know that because the judge ordered the identity of the client who had requested to remain unnamed revealed. This comes as the judge will also decide if prosecutors can look at material the FBI seized during the raids on the president's lawyer's office and hotel and home and safety deposit boxes and electronic devices. Court order that sought information about, among other things, a hush money payment made to Stormy Daniels not long before the 2016 election. This is an unprecedented battle in which the Trump legal team is asserting that they do not trust the Trump administration Justice Department. CNN's Shimon Prokupez is outside the hearing for us and is going to try to make sense of all of this. Shimon, the hearing's still ongoing. What do we know so far about this bombshell news and Sean Hannity's relationship with Michael Cohen?
Yeah, Jake, I've been out here since Friday, and what should have been a very simple hearing with the judge making a simple decision has turned into one bombshell after the other. And just a short time ago, the judge forcing Michael Cohen's attorney to reveal who this mystery third person was. They submitted court documents this morning saying that they revealed two of his clients, the president and Elliot Brody, a Republican finance guy, and the third person they would not reveal. And the judge basically, after countless arguments by two attorneys representing Michael Cohen and also a media attorney who was there arguing for us in the press, saying that preventing Michael Cohen's attorney from filing this under seal forced him to reveal the name. He stood up in court, this lawyer, Stephen Ryan, and he basically said Sean Hannity. And as you can imagine, there was really shock in the courtroom. Several people ran out, including myself, to report the news.
And Sean Hannity just addressed this on his radio show. We're going to bring that sound in just a minute or so. Shimon, we've also learned today that the U.S. Attorney's Office is describing this investigation as fast-moving and that even aside from the raids, they have, quote, considerable information about Cohen's activities. What does that mean?
Yeah, so this was in a transcript that occurred on Friday, a sidebar conversation that was released today. And essentially, it appears that the government has been working on this for quite some time. We know that they've obtained emails through other warrants, covert warrants that they had submitted, and they reviewed a lot of emails, several email accounts, according to the court filing here today. In addition, Jake, in court, we learned this afternoon that the FBI seized some 10 boxes of material. This is some of this material that Cohen is claiming is privileged. We also learned there are hard drives and other electronic devices that are all that the government would like to review.
All right, Shimon Prokupez, thank you so much. I'm joined now by CNN legal analysts and former federal prosecutors Jeffrey Toobin and Laura Coates. Thanks for joining us. Hannity is holding his regular radio show right now. He just addressed this revelation. Take a listen.
And let me be very clear to the media. Michael never represented me in any matter. I never retained him in the traditional sense as retaining a lawyer. I never received an invoice from Michael. I never paid legal fees to Michael. But I have occasionally had brief discussions with him about legal questions about which I wanted his input and perspective.
Jeffrey Toobin, your response?
Well, there seems to be some disagreement between Michael Cohen and Sean Hannity about whether they ever had a legal relationship. And that's potentially significant because if Sean Hannity is telling the truth there, then their conversations would not be privileged, and any relationship between them would not be privileged. I mean, certainly, if Sean Hannity did retain Michael Cohen, he should have disclosed that because he's been a big advocate of Michael Cohen on his television and radio shows. That's a matter of journalistic ethics. It's not legal. It's not a legal issue. But there does seem to be a difference of opinion here about whether there ever was an attorney-client relationship between the two of them.
And Laura, one of the things that Sean Hannity made clear to say was that Michael Cohen never represented him with any third-party matter. This, of course, comes in the context of Michael Cohen representing Donald Trump in the Stormy Daniels matter, and also representing former Republican National Committee Vice Chair, Finance Chair, Elliot Broidy, in a $1.6 million payment he made to a former Playboy model who got pregnant. So Hannity trying to make it clear nothing like that is afoot with him.
Of course, he wants to have the optics look good for himself. But what I picked up on, Jake, was his statement of, he never represented me in a traditional sense as an attorney and client. That's precisely what the government is arguing about, why they went in to Michael Cohen's office, his home, and his hotel to say this was not a true attorney-client relationship. This is somebody who happened to be an attorney on behalf of the President of the United States, but maybe not. And because of that, because there's a disconnect in there, the statement by Sean Hannity almost helps the government's case to say, this isn't somebody you can protect. This isn't somebody who had an invoice. I mean, you can do pro bono legal work, Jake, but the idea that there was never a time they actually had a clear attorney-client relationship, that is horrible for Michael Cohen's ability to say, please do not let them look at these documents, this footage, the electronic information.
And Jeffrey, to your point, we should note, Hannity, one of the most successful and viewed anchors in cable news. He has been covering this story of the raid on Michael Cohen's office, hotel room, home, safety deposit boxes, electronic devices. Here is how he reacted to the news of the raids on Cohen a week ago today.
You think Hillary Clinton's attorneys had their offices raided during this email investigation? Not a chance. Mueller has ostensibly tonight declared war against the President of the United States. Clearly, his objective is to remove him from office. Now, I told you, and I've told anyone who will listen, Mueller's team is corrupt, starting with him.
So not in that clip, and as far as we can tell, never did he disclose that Michael Cohen had some sort of professional relationship with him.
Right. I mean, that is sort of journalistic ethics 101, that if you have some sort of relationship with someone you're reporting about, you let your viewers, your readers know about it. What's confusing here is that he does not seem to say, I mean, on the radio today, Hannity seems to say that there was no attorney-client relationship, so maybe there was nothing to disclose. I think all of us know Sean Hannity is a conservative. He's a Trump supporter. It's not surprising that he would have spoken to Michael Cohen in a friendly way. There's nothing wrong or inappropriate about that, but if there was an attorney-client relationship, certainly it should have been disclosed on the air.
Yeah, it sounds like there, as you pointed out initially, Michael Cohen and Sean Hannity have a disagreement of sorts about whether or not Sean Hannity is a client of his. Let's move on to this case. In a new transcript out today, the U.S. Attorney's Office is describing the Cohen investigation as a fast-moving investigation. And then aside from the raid, they, quote, already have considerable amounts of information about Mr. Cohen's activities. Laura, what's your takeaway on that?
Well, this is clearly what we thought in the beginning, that this does not start with Avenatti's talking about Stormy Daniels. It did not start with the off-the-cuff remark by the president on the back of Air Force One. This began weeks and potentially months ago. And we thought that would be the case because, remember, probable cause is the floor, not the ceiling for getting a warrant. A warrant of this magnitude, of an attorney, of somebody who says that they're an attorney for the President of the United States, that would have been the bare minimum. And so they'd have to have these piles of information and evidence to convince a judge and a neutral magistrate to say, listen, there is a reason we have to raid this person's home, their office, and their hotel room, without getting any permission, without any notice beforehand. This is not surprising to me, but it is shocking if you're Michael Cohen to know that this has been in the works for quite some time. There may be even tapped lines in some way to perform that we don't know about yet. A lot is coming his direction.
And Jeffrey, I spoke with Stormy Daniels' attorney, Michael Avenatti, yesterday on State of the Union. He told me that, quote, I strongly believe that within the next 90 days, we're going to see an unsealing of an indictment against Michael Cohen for a host of very serious offenses. Is that bravado, or is there a reason to believe that might be true?
Well, there is certainly reason to believe that Michael Cohen is in a world of trouble. I mean, it is very unusual for judges to agree to a search of a lawyer's office. It's happened. It creates unusual problems, and that's what they're sorting out in court about who reviews the documents to see if they're privileged. But just the basic fact is that judges don't give search warrants for lawyers' offices unless there is very compelling evidence of criminality. That certainly suggests that an indictment might be possible, but I do think, in fairness to Michael Cohen, we need to be very careful about saying that, more careful than Michael Avenatti, because we don't know what the evidence is, and we don't know even what crimes he's suspected of. So I'm certainly not going to sit here and say, he's about to be indicted for X, when I don't know that's the case.
All right, Jeffrey Toobin, Laura Coates, thank you both. Appreciate it. Could the revelation about Michael Cohen and Sean Hannity hurt President Trump? New information about the relationship between Hannity and Cohen next. Stay with us.
Hiring? Every business needs great people, and a better way to find them. Something better than posting your job online and just praying for the right people to see it. ZipRecruiter knew there was a smarter way, so they built a platform that finds the right job candidates for you. ZipRecruiter learns what you're looking for, identifies people with the right experience, and invites them to apply to your job. In fact, 80% of employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. And ZipRecruiter doesn't stop there. They even spotlight the strongest applications you receive, so you never miss a great match. The right candidates are out there. ZipRecruiter is how you find them. Businesses of all sizes trust ZipRecruiter for their hiring needs. Right now, listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/Tapper. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Tapper. ZipRecruiter.com/Tapper. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
Just to attend to CNN, we've just learned, of course, that Sean Hannity is the mystery client number 3 of Michael Cohen's. He's the person who had apparently asked over the weekend not to have his name revealed, according to Cohen's attorney. But a source now tells CNN that Sean Hannity never asked Michael Cohen to assert attorney-client privilege. Hannity tweeted and said on his radio show that he thought conversations were confidential. The source also said Hannity has no interest in being associated with this proceeding, but insisted that Hannity's dealing with Cohen are not pertinent to the government's investigation. My political panel joins me now to try to make sense of all this. Karine, I don't understand what's going on. What do you think is going on here in terms of Michael Cohen asserting that Sean Hannity was a client, Sean Hannity kind of downplaying it?
It is the most bizarre thing, because we were talking ourselves, trying to figure out, well, what does this all mean? But here's the thing, Jake. I think the problem here is you're talking about two people who have no credibility, and neither of them are honest brokers. So it's like, who do you believe? I don't see myself believing either of them right now. And you need more evidence, more to come out of the story before you can actually make a statement on this.
David, you probably have a different take. But
as to their credibility, I'll leave that up to everyone else to judge. Sean Hannity's a smart guy. You note the choice of words. He said he assumed his conversations with Mr. Cohen were confidential, not privileged. There is a distinction.
Right.
Confidential is something that's, hey, don't tell anybody. Privilege is protected under the law. So his choice of words there are pretty specific, thinking, obviously he's saying he wasn't my attorney. We didn't have an attorney-client privilege. Mr. Cohen, for whatever reason, seemed to assert the exact opposite of that. I'm not quite sure if he's trying to posture, perhaps for whatever reason, and assert that Sean Hannity was his client. I don't see what that gets him moving forward, but we'll just have to stay tuned.
Yeah, and Jackie, this comes as Michael Cohen is disclosing who his clients are.
Right.
We know that President Trump is one of his clients, and the Stormy Daniels matter is what started some of this, presumably. We also know that Elliot Broidy, a former Republican National Committee finance vice chair, through Michael Cohen, paid off a Playboy model $1.6 million. He had impregnated her, apparently. But Sean Hannity, quick to say, he's never represented me in a third-party matter.
Right. I think this is a list much like being on the RNC Finance Committee. You don't really want to be one of Michael Cohen's clients at this point. Right. But the real question is, I think, when you take a step back, why didn't Hannity disclose this on his show? He's been talking about this case. He's been talking about Cohen over and over again. And he didn't. If Michael Cohen was my lawyer, he is not. I would say that before I commented on it. And so that for the viewers, for people who are following this, I think that's an open question of, okay, fine, if you talk to this guy, why not say that? So you are beyond reproach on this issue.
Yeah, but Jackie, to that point, maybe Sean Hannity didn't consider the conversations attorney-client. He wasn't engaging him as a lawyer. Maybe he doesn't consider.
You could say I got asked for legal advice.
Yeah, here's the problem. You have Sean Hannity on Fox News every night for the past how many years now that we've been dealing with Donald Trump.
Oh, okay.
Right. Well, I've been thinking Donald Trump in particular, who is literally using his show like as state TV for the White House and going after the DOJ, going after everyone who is against Donald Trump. And this is a detail that he did not share. Is true.
Corinne, I can't answer it. I'm just hypothesizing why. I mean, I have
all we can do at this point because we don't know all the details of this.
Now, I thought I heard Sean Hannity say on his radio show today, and I was listening out of the corner of my ear because we were getting ready for the show here, that there was at times like maybe he'd give Michael Cohen like $10 so that something was covered under attorney-client privilege. You're a lawyer. Does it work that way?
I play one on this show. Let's put it that way.
Well, you have a law degree.
I have a law degree. I was a public finance lawyer, not a criminal lawyer.
Right.
So I can't tell you the construct of what constitutes. What threshold you have to cross to have the protection. I don't think that perhaps giving somebody $10 and shaking hands constitutes the privilege. I could be mistaken, but I don't think that. I'm sure Twitter will blast me and say it does.
Oh, Twitter's going to Twitter. Jackie, do you buy the argument that the New York Times reported associates of President Trump think that this matter, the Michael Cohen matter, forget Sean Hannity, but the Michael Cohen matter, this is actually potentially more worrisome than the Mueller matter?
He seems awfully upset about it. I mean, and this is something, even if he fires Mueller, this is going to go on. This is in a different jurisdiction. He can't touch this because it involves New York State. So the fact that he has no control over it, you have to imagine that's going to anger the president even more and could have bigger consequences. He can't make this go away. It's going to have a... He can't.
No, he can't.
Harder to imagine bigger consequences than impeachment, right? I mean, there's harder,
Right.
And Michael Cohen is like his fixer, his hatchet man. I mean, I can see why
bodies are buried.
Exactly, which is why Donald Trump
literally.
Not
all right,
literally.
stick around. Just want to make sure. Stick around. Fired FBI Director James Comey saying the president is, quote, morally unfit for office. How is the White House responding? Stay with us.
The right sheets can take your sleep and your style to the next level. With Boll & Branch, the upgrade has never been more affordable. Every set is crafted from 100% organic cotton. They get softer and softer over time. That's why they have thousands of 5-star reviews, and even 3 U.S. presidents have Boll & Branch sheets. Try them for 30 nights, and if you don't love them, send them back for a full refund. Go to bollandbranch.com today for $50 off your first set of sheets, plus free U.S. shipping with promo code CNN2. Spelled B-O-L-L and branch.com. That's bollandbranch.com, promo code CNN2.
We're just learning that 10 million people tuned in to hear fired FBI Director James Comey's first TV interview last night, where he questioned everything from the president's hair to the size of his hands to, most notably perhaps, his fitness to lead the United States. CNN's Boris Sanchez joins me now live from West Palm Beach, where President Trump will spend the week. And Boris, as for the president, we know he watched bits and pieces of Comey's interview. But so far, since the interview aired at least, he's only tweeted one nasty tweet about Comey.
That's right, Jake, and he's had plenty of opportunities to respond on camera after a barrage of tweets over the weekend. Instead, the president letting that tweet and some of his surrogates do the talking for him.
Did you watch James Comey's interview?
President Trump avoiding reporters' questions today as his staff takes up the battle for believability against former FBI Director James Comey and his tell-all book. In a scathing first interview since being fired last year, Comey told ABC News that President Trump was unfit to lead.
I think he's morally unfit to be president.
White lives matter! White lives matter!
A person who sees moral equivalence in Charlottesville who talks about and treats women like they're pieces of meat, who lies constantly about matters big and small and insists the American people believe it, that person's not fit to be president of the United States on moral grounds.
The White House quick to shoot back.
James Comey is a disgraced, disgruntled, discredited individual.
This morning, the president's close advisors lined up and took direct aim at Comey's credibility and motives.
The president thinks that Jim Comey is engaging in revisionist history. Jim Comey is very skilled at diverting the spotlight onto himself. And it's unfortunate that people think he's got a big story to tell. He had very limited interaction with the president.
This, as a recent ABC News poll shows Americans find Comey more believable than Trump by a margin of 48 to 32%. Also drawing ire from the Oval Office, Comey's admission that he reopened the FBI's investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails days before the 2016 presidential election because he assumed that she would win the presidency. His October 28th letter to Congress on the matter, no doubt a key moment in the race.
What did it feel like to be James Comey in the last 10 days of that campaign after you sent the letter?
It sucked. I walked around vaguely sick to my stomach, feeling beaten down, felt like I was totally alone, that everybody hated me, and that there wasn't a way out because it really was the right thing to do.
The president tweeted out his response this morning, leveling criminal accusations at the former FBI director, writing, quote, Comey drafted the crooked Hillary exoneration long before he talked to her, lied in Congress to Senator G, then based his decisions on her poll numbers. Disgruntled, he, McCabe, and the others committed many crimes. It was just the latest in days of unfiltered response to Comey's revelations. It seems this fight is one neither the president nor Comey is willing to forfeit.
And we may still see a more thorough response from President Trump. As you well know, Jake, James Comey's media tour is just kicking off with a number of different appearances still to be aired this week. And as you noted, the president is here in Mar-a-Lago, where some of his more lengthy and angry Twitter tirades have been spawned. Jake?
Indeed. Boris Sanchez, thank you so much. My panel is back with me for more. David Urban, I guess probably the strongest thing that Comey said last night was that he said the president is morally unfit for the job. He said, based on the president suggesting there was a moral equivalence between different sides in Charlottesville based on treating women like meat, the lies he tells repeatedly in office. How do you respond to that the president is morally unfit?
Look, obviously, I'm not here to debate how the president's response to Charlottesville or any of the issues of the women, but in terms of the moral equivalency and Comey's assertion that he's morally unfit, I don't think Americans, when they went to the polls in the election, were looking for a moral leader. I don't think they're asking for the president to be a moral leader. The media takes great umbrage anytime the vice president talks about anything, right? They make fun of the vice president for his morals. So you can't have it in both ways, right? You have a gentleman in a vice president that the media makes fun for being too moral and the president for being amoral. So I'm not quite sure where everybody wants things to fall down. I don't think at this stage in America that the nation looks for the president to be the moral leader.
I don't think I've ever made fun of the vice president.
No, but a lot of people have. You have to admit. I mean,
but let me ask you, Kareem, about the point that the American people knew who Donald Trump was before they elected him. That's a fair point. I mean, it's not as though people thought he was. I'm going to date myself with this reference, but like Alan Alda with women. I mean, people knew that he was a cad. People knew that he said things that weren't true. People knew that when it came to some, maybe he had some blind spots when it came to issues of race and such. I mean, he has a point there.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If we go back to 2016, Jim Comey mishandled the Hillary Clinton emails. He just did, and that is a fact. And I do believe that he did hand over the White House to Donald Trump. There's scientific evidence upon scientific evidence that shows that it did have an effect, what he did days out before the election. And we have to remember, her polls were way up, and then that happened, and things changed. And so that is a problem that James Comey has to live with. But at the end of the day, that is not That is absolutely not why Donald Trump fired Jim Comey. He fired him because of the Russia thing. He said it himself. He fired me, and he wanted to obstruct justice. He wanted to protect himself, his family, and his top aides. He said, I'm not.
No, Jim Comey has never once
I'm talking
said
about
that.
Donald Trump.
No, Donald Trump said
I'm saying that there's one thing about, Jim Comey and what he did, but that is not why Donald Trump fired Jim Comey.
Kellyanne, Jackie, I want to get your response to this. And Kellyanne Conway, in October 2016, when everybody was sitting in the different chairs and the Hillary Clinton people were attacking Jim Comey, Kellyanne Conway tweeted, astonished by the all-out assault on Comey by Team Clinton, suggesting he is a partisan interfering with the election is dangerous and unfair.
There's a tweet for that. It is a genre of, I feel like, Twitter now. And it's hypocritical. Of course it's hypocritical because they're all guns blazing at Jim Comey. There's also the Sarah Huckabee Sanders tweet. I think it's about
when you're attacking the FBI, you're losing.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of this when now that they're on the other side of it, they're taking the opposite position. And
Jim Comey would argue, I think, and we'll find out on Thursday when I get to interview him, but right. I think he would argue, or I think he feels that the fact that he gets attacked by both sides might mean that he's doing his job the right way.
He would probably argue that, but
I know you two disagree.
It's hard to believe that he came forward with the information about Hillary Clinton because he was worried about her being a illegitimate president. I think he was more worried about the FBI. And
you agree with that?
No, absolutely. He was trying to protect himself.
Yeah, it's self-preservation.
He's trying to protect himself.
Look at this agreement.
Oh my God, we're
I'll read it again. In 2016, and then in 2016, and then Majority Leader Harry Reid, or Minority Leader at the time, sent a letter saying Comey's guilty of a violation of the Hatch Act. Right? He's a public employee engaged in basically electioneering.
Well, it's the same genre as Rod Rosenstein of Comey being fired because of Hillary Clinton, how he handled the Hillary Clinton case. It's just not true.
Just everybody using whatever they want to make the argument they can. Everyone stick around. What you didn't hear during the Comey interview next.
From executive producer Jordan Peele, Tracy Morgan is back.
What?
In a new TBS series that the New York Times calls a gritty, funny comedy.
I just did 15 years in prison. What happened to Brooklyn?
Starring Tiffany Haddish.
I'm gonna bust in there like the Kool-Aid man.
And Cedric the Entertainer.
You thought she was just gonna wait for you? She just got lost. She got lost on another man's bouncy house.
Don't miss Tracy Morgan's return to TV.
Second chances are a beautiful thing.
The Last OG. Tuesdays, 10:30, 9:30 Central. Only on TBS.
In our politics lead, of all the things James Comey said in his first interview promoting his bombshell book, this might end up being the most dangerous for President Trump.
Was President Trump obstructing justice?
Possibly. I mean, it's certainly some evidence of obstruction of justice.
Joining me now is CNN's Jim Sciutto. And Jim, I guess the question is Comey now the star witness of an obstruction of justice case?
Certainly a star witness. I think that's the way we should look at this interview, is set aside for a moment his assessments of Trump's fitness for office, his personal descriptions of Trump. And remember, he is a witness to issues that we know are of interest to the special counsels, specifically and most importantly, that meeting in the Oval Office early in President Trump's term when President Trump, according to James Comey, asked him to let it go, the case against Michael Flynn, when he was already under criminal investigation. And he said in that interview airing yesterday that he would be willing to testify under oath if the special counsel pursues a prosecution under obstruction of justice with that in mind. He's a witness, and you can argue a credible witness. I mean, people have their opinions, but argue he would be a credible witness in that environment.
What did Comey have to say on whatever compromising information Russia might, emphasize might, have on President Trump?
Well, he had to say something that's pretty remarkable to hear from the mouth of a former FBI director who was briefed, at least on the early intelligence about this. Have a listen.
Do you think the Russians have something on Donald Trump?
I think it's possible. I don't know. These are more words I never thought I'd utter about a president of the United States, but it's possible.
Possible that the Russians have compromising information on Donald Trump. Remember, Jake, from early on. That was the central claim of the so-called Steele dossier that you and I were among a team that were the first to report on in that briefing, that the Russians have financial and personal information, some of it salacious, on him. And there's that FBI director who saw much of the intelligence, not making a final conclusion by any means, but saying it's possible.
All right, Jim Sciutto, thank you so much. Let's bring the panel back. Okay, let me just ask this.
Right.
It's possible. Jeffrey Toobin earlier today on CNN was very harshly critical of James Comey for saying that, because it's possible that the Russians have it is the same thing as saying it's possible that they don't. And Toobin's argument was that's not what prosecutors do. Prosecutors and investigators, they either have evidence or they have no evidence. And Toobin said this is the same thing he tried to do with Hillary Clinton, where they had no evidence that she had broken the law, but he also wanted to, chum the waters and criticize her.
Right. I don't disagree with Jeffrey on this one, because it's irresponsible just to throw that out there and not say anything to back it up and not say anything to refute it. It really does it fuels already toxic environment and people were tuning into that interview to understand what happened. That doesn't contribute to anyone's understanding of what is happening with the president in Russia.
I mean, Karine, it's possible that there's life on other planets.
Yes, it is very possible. Look, I agree with Jeffrey Toobin. I respect him. I think he's a very smart guy. So I don't have any arguments against that. The only thing I would say is that Donald Trump has not been acting like an innocent man in all of this. And the fact of the matter is that his campaign chair has been indicted. The deputy to the campaign chair has been indicted and now cooperating. Michael Flynn has been indicted and now cooperating. But I'm just saying there is something there. There is something to this. That is all that I'm saying.
Corinne, you know as well as I do, Manafort, Gates, those are 2013 crimes that they're pleading guilty to. 2013, long before Donald Trump was a candidate. Jim Comey, the rest of that quote, if you read it, if you let it play out, says it's possible, but I don't think it's likely. Right? And so completely, I agree with Toobin and these two fine ladies here. I think it's completely irresponsible for Director Comey to be doing that and saying those things.
Comey also spoke with USA Today about how Trump talked about Putin behind closed doors. Take a listen.
At least in my experience, he won't criticize Vladimir Putin, even in private. Even in a meeting with 3 people in the Oval Office, he is arguing that he gave a good answer when he said, essentially, we are the same kind of killers that Putin's thugs are.
And this, Comey writes about this in the book, because one of the arguments is, even if Trump publicly wants to have a good relationship with Vladimir Putin, that's why he publicly doesn't want to criticize him, and you can make an argument for that, why privately would he be unwilling to criticize Putin? And this was in response directly to his interview with Bill O'Reilly, when O'Reilly said Putin's a killer, and he said, you don't think that we're killers too?
Well, you don't have to take Jim Comey's word on this one. There's a lot of reporting that really substantiates that. I mean, the Washington Post had a story just today about how the president had to be dragged over the finish line to expel the Russian diplomats, and was angry at his staff when he found out the United States expelled 60, which looked like it would look different than the individual European countries that were also expelling diplomats. His behavior with Vladimir Putin is questionable, which is why when James Comey is asked about whether the president is colluding with the Russians or whatever that question was, it does raise eyebrows, which is why he needed to give a straight answer to that question because he isn't acting like...
Quickly, if you could. Look, I think the Russia stuff, if you guys are hanging your hat, if Democrats are hanging their hat on Russian collusion...
I'm not a Democrat.
No, I know, but I'm saying if Democrats are hanging their hats on Russia... No, I get it. I know. But if Democrats are hanging their hat on Russian collusion and there's some big finding... You guys are going to be waiting a long time.
I'm just going to repeat what I said earlier, which is that Donald Trump is not acting like an innocent man.
Yes.
And you're going to be waiting a long time on the Russian collusion piece.
All right, stick around. She escaped the Nazi occupation as a little girl. She's warning today that fascism is still right in front of our faces here and abroad. She's pointing at the White House, in fact. Is that fair? Former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright joins me to explain next. Stay with us.
Hey, it's Howard Beck, and I've got Kevin Pritchard on Bleacher Report's The Full 48.
They've overachieved wildly, and every single game, sometimes I leave the arena, I go, how did we win that game? But we keep doing it, It's like we played well down the stretch, and the last 4 or 5 minutes, we can be a tough team, and we've lost close games, but we win our fair share, too.
So check out The Full 48 now on the Bleacher Report app or subscribe at Apple Podcasts.
Check out The Full 48 now on the Bleacher Report app or subscribe at Apple Podcasts.
Bleacher Report app or subscribe at Apple Podcasts.
48 now on the Bleacher Report app or subscribe at Apple Podcasts.
We're back with the world lead, and President Trump is pumping the brakes on proposed new sanctions against Russia for supporting and protecting Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. The Washington Post is reporting that the president met with his national security team last night and told them he was upset that the sanctions had been rolled out by Nikki Haley, among others, because he was uncomfortable with them. Hours earlier, the U.S. ambassador to the UN vowed additional measures will be announced as early as today. This all comes as international investigators are trying to get to the site of that April 7th chemical weapons attack in Syria, and they're expressing fears that Russia may have already tampered with the evidence. Joining me now to talk about this and much, much more is Madeleine Albright, former Secretary of State under President Bill Clinton. She's out with a new book. It's titled Fascism, A Warning. Madam Secretary, thanks for being here.
Great to be with you, Jake.
It's a fascinating book. I want to ask you, everything's really of a piece, but the news that the president stopped these sanctions, even though Nikki Haley had announced that they might come as soon as today, happened the same time that Comey is on USA Today saying that even in private, President Trump wouldn't criticize Vladimir Putin. And also there's this new Washington Post report saying that President Trump was very upset to learn how big the expulsion of the Russian diplomats was. What do you make of this reluctance of President Trump's to criticize Putin?
There are so many crazy parts to all of this. And I think the question is, why does he want to do that? And I think that some of the things, there's got to be something that he wants to make sure that Putin stays a friend of his. So we only have to speculate about what that is. The bottom line, though, is everything about this is nuts. Because, in fact, the Russians were supportive of Assad in terms of using the chemical weapons, because they were the ones that theoretically had delivered him in terms of getting an agreement. The other part is that the reason for the earlier sanctions and throwing all the diplomats out has to do with what the Russians were doing in England. And Putin is behind all that. These things would not be happening. And then just the disarray in decision-making. I was ambassador to the United Nations, and I have to say I feel sorry for Nikki Haley. She has been very tough up there making points. She makes very clear that she represents the president, and all of a sudden she's put into this ridiculous situation of looking as though she is out there by herself on something, and that undermines the whole decision-making process and makes us, frankly, look absolutely inept.
Your book focuses on the spread of fascism across the globe and the threat to the United States as well. You write about leaders such as Putin and Trump, quote, "If we think of fascism as a wound from the past that had almost healed, putting Trump in the White House was like ripping off the bandage and picking at the scab." Those are tough words. Obviously, there isn't fascism in the United States. I have freedom of speech. I have freedom of the press. People are still voting diplomatically. What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm not saying that Trump is a fascist, but I am saying that he's the most undemocratic president in modern American history, that his instincts are anti-democratic, that he's done everything to malign the press, that he has underplayed the whole role of the judicial department. What he really does is make clear that he doesn't understand the way a democratic system works, and that gives a lot of comfort to those authoritarian proto-fascist people that are out there, and he's not playing the role the U.S. needs to play, which is the leader of the free world.
This in the book about the comfort that he brings, President Trump brings, in your view, to people like Duterte in the Philippines or Erdogan in Turkey. How does he bring them comfort?
Well, first of all, it used to be that the United States makes clear what democracy is about, freedom of speech, independent judiciary, not propaganda in a number of different ways. So we are not carrying that out. That seat in America now is empty. But the other part is even worse than that. He will go, for instance, he went to Poland, stood beside the Polish leader and said what they were doing was great, and what they've done is also undercut their judiciary. So he's giving comfort to them.
Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. We have to go to the courthouse in Manhattan now, where a hearing involving the president's lawyer has just wrapped.
He's played by a different set of rules, or should we say no rules at all. He has never thought that the little man, or especially women, and even more women like me, mattered. That ends now. My attorney and I are committed to making sure that everyone finds out the truth and the facts of what happened, and I give my word that we will not rest until that happens. Thank you very much.
That was porn actress Stormy Daniels at the courthouse. Here's her attorney, Michael Avenatti.
All right, I will now accept questions about today's hearing and other topics relating to my client. Yeah, I think Judge Wood was very reasoned and measured in her approach relating to the documents. Our number one concern was that the documents, the integrity of the documents, be maintained during the process. It is clear from the order by Judge Wood that that's exactly what's going to happen. That will ensure that no documents are spoliated, destroyed, or otherwise tampered with, which is our chief concern in connection with this process. I'm not going to answer that. That's a ridiculous question. Next question. Well, I think she's ultimately going to determine whether a special master is appropriate or not. One thing I will say is this. I said last Friday and this weekend that Michael Cohen was radioactive and that anybody that was associated with him in the last 20 to 30 years should be very, very concerned. What we witnessed earlier in the hearing with the disclosure relating to Sean Hannity proved my point exactly. He is radioactive. Anyone that had any contact with this man in the last 20 years should be very concerned about what secrets of theirs are within these documents. Next question. Thank you. I'm sorry? Thank you. Depending on what is contained within those documents, I think there is significant danger to the president. The president trusted Mr. Cohen as his fixer for years. He trusted him with his innermost secrets, and I think that the chickens are about to come home to roost. Next question.
If you were Mr. President Trump, what advice would you give him today?
I wouldn't even begin to advise the president at this juncture. I think the ship has sailed.
Why did Ms. Daniels come to court today? There was no really reason legally for her to do.
No, there was absolutely a reason, because we wanted to ensure that the integrity of the documents was maintained, and we wanted to lend her voice towards making sure that the American people learned the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about what happened to her and to others in her position over the last 10 to 15 years. We haven't made a determination yet as to whether she will attend each hearing in connection with this process. Well, I think it speaks volumes, and I think Sean Hannity got thrown under the bus by Michael Cohen's counsel today, who was clearly more concerned about protecting the president than protecting Sean Hannity. But we're going to let them sort that out. Anything else?
Yes, are you concerned for your safety right now, as we speak today?
I have been concerned with my safety for the duration of the case, as my client has been, but we've decided the risk is more than worth it, and we're going to see this to conclusion, whether it's next week, next month, next year. No matter how long it takes, we're not going away. Thank you.
That was Michael Avenatti, the attorney for porn actress Stormy Daniels, whose real name is Stephanie Clifford, speaking outside the courtroom where Michael Cohen had a hearing today. CNN's Shimon Prokupecz is outside that courtroom. Shimon, what came out of today's hearing other than the disclosure that Mr. Cohen at least believes he has also been a client? He has also had a client, Sean Hannity.
So to the legal case, Jake, a small victory perhaps for Michael Cohen's team. The judge has agreed, has told the prosecutors, the government here, to turn over, to hand them all the documents that they obtained in that FBI raid. Remember, we're here because Michael Cohen's attorneys are arguing there's privileged material. Well, the judge has sided somewhat with Michael Cohen's attorney here. She said, okay, I'm going to have the prosecutors hand you guys all of those documents, all of that material, and then we will reconvene, and you will essentially what's going to happen is they're going to decide after that what's privilege, what's not. The bottom line here, and I think this is the important point, Jake, important point here, is that the government, the FBI and prosecutors cannot begin looking at any of this material for their investigation. So this will perhaps delay it somewhat.
All right, Shimon Prokupecz, thank you so much. CNN legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin and Laura Coates are back with me. Jeffrey and Laura, help break this down for me. Jeff, what just happened? What did Judge Kimballwood do?
Well, the question is, who will look at these documents to decide whether there's an even assertion of a privilege? And it looks like Cohen's lawyers and maybe the president's lawyers will be able to look at these documents and make a case to the judge that these documents should not be shown to the prosecution. So it is a victory, I think, for the recipients of the search warrant, the people who were searched, because they now have the right to make an argument that the stuff is privileged, but there's no guarantee they'll win, and the judge will ultimately decide whether the privilege applies.
Laura, your quick take?
And that's true, especially since the reason to have this kind of covert way of handling the warrant was because they didn't trust this person to be forthcoming or hand over material. So it almost seems counterintuitive that they'll go back into the Fox's hen house in order to figure out how to deal from here.
All right, that's it for The Lead today. Thank you so much, Laura and Jeffrey. This Thursday, of course, I will sit down with former FBI Director James Comey for his first cable news interview. That will be live right here on The Lead on CNN this Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern. I now turn you over to Wolf Blitzer, who has more on breaking news in the Situation Room. Thanks for watching.